Welcome to Simple Life. I'm Cal, and our cows are currently being moved. They usually get moved in the morning, but today we're moving them in the afternoon. So I'm kind of acting as the perimeter while the boys move the wire. So the pasture that we currently have here, well, it's a bit on the dry side. It's kind of what you expect here in Oregon. I like to think of winter and summer as basically being the same thing. In the winter, you get a lot of rain and a lot of clouds. In the summer, you get a lot of sun and not a lot of rain. So both of them cause the grasses kind of to go dormant and they don't really do much. Now, that has to do with variety as well. And since this field has had hay cut off of it and has been tilled for years and years and years, I can't expect to have really great soil and great diversity of crops. And that's something we're going to take care of going forward. One of the ways we're going to be dealing with that is by doing some no-till drilling. And we're going to put in some cover crops. We're going to put in all kinds of cover crops. We're going to put in the stuff that is great in the winter. We're going to put in stuff that's great in the summer. Some rye, barleys, oats, clovers, some kale, one of my favorites, and a lot of stuff like that that does really great in different seasons to help create not only more biomass, because that's really important to building soil, but also to create better forage for our animals. So this mix of stuff that we're going to have here and that we're going to put on the land is going to help us be more self-sufficient in the future. So for me, when I look at our pastures and I see how dry and dead they are, and then I go and I look at pastures like what Dave has, which is the gentleman that we lease from, and I look at his pastures, they've been tilled once in 30 some years that he's owned it. And you look at the lushness of his pastures. As we get into the bottomland, you'll see we have a little bit better retention of water. And how do I know that? Well, we're getting a lot more of this dark green area, as you're seeing like right in here, and less of this yellow area like we have out here. Now, some of this is yellow because there's seed tops and stuff like that that are still there. But a lot of this is a lot greener and a lot thicker and still fairly lush. Now, our cows have already come through here and I didn't want them eating it all the way to the ground. And the main reason for that is I want the ground to have coverage. I want there to be more moisture locked in the ground, not being zapped out by the sun, as well as I want the ground, the soil to be built up. Now, how do I know I have soil here? Well, here's a good example. Okay, this isn't just, clay. How do I know this isn't just clay? Well, because I can dig my fingers into it and actually get some. But there is definitely something here. If I take you just on the other side of this little seasonal stream where there's cracks, where the clay is just hardened up, and it's just clay, like literally it's just clay. There's not much soil there, and it's not surprising that I really don't have much grass there either. Just how bad this soil is. I mean, the soil is hot, like it's been baked, and there's just, you can't break it. I mean, it is clay. It is just clay. So coming in, letting the ground get a little softer, using a no-till drill, putting in some cover crops, doing that for a couple years, that intensive treatment to this land will help encourage both biomass creation and retention, as well as moisture retention. With those cover crops, well, comes coverage, and that will potentially help prevent the drying out of the soil as bad as it currently is. And with, even if it's just a few percentage, that few percentage will help going through the summer. Over the next few years, that'll help our pastures become much more healthy. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about land management and retaining soil and building good environments for our animals and for our crops to grow in is because I think it's key. I think it's key to being self-sufficient. And while I'm not saying, hey, we're all supposed to be an island, you know, in the middle of the ocean by ourselves, like everything is on us, I think it's really smart to at least be thinking, how can I be as self-sufficient as I possibly can? Well, I think this is just one way to do it. One way is to be really good at managing your land, getting the best out of your land and building the best land you possibly can. Both of the properties that I have a history of being tilled and farmed. So as we go forward, we're going to continue to work both of these properties to help build soil, to retain moisture, to help build up good ecosystems for our animals and our plants to grow in. I'm going to take you over to the leased field and show you what it looks like, show you how beautiful. You're a bull. What are you doing? Yes, that is that's a bull. He's 18 months old, and he is going and getting some milk off of his mom while his sibling is doing this. You are ridiculous. You are ridiculous. I hope she kicks you in the head. I hope you're proud of yourself. She's supposed to be getting all the milk, not you, you big bully. So we're gonna go over to Dave's. I'm gonna show you what that looks like over there, show you the quality of the pasture, show you what I think is ideal. So if you look at underneath this black walnut tree, you're gonna see that we have a really kind of lush grass. Now, black walnuts are notorious for being horrible to grow food underneath or grow anything under, but this grass does pretty decent here. Now, obviously, it's just because there's shade there, but what's interesting is if you look over here to my right, over here, you'll see along this whole entire hillside right here, you end up with a lot better grass. Underneath the apple tree, you end up with better grass. Now, I understand that this is an obvious thing that the grass will do better in the shade where it's not getting blasted by the sun. But what I'm also looking at is the fact that this pasture hasn't been tilled. Like, this pasture's only been tilled once as far as I know, and that's after asking Dave. But look at the grasses. Look at these grasses. These grasses are doing excellent. Now, some of these are doing excellent because this is low line and there's a well right there, so there's probably a lot more groundwater right here. So that's probably part of it. But the other part of it is there's soil here that can retain a lot more moisture than out in my fields. It goes all the way down this whole field. It's not just right here. So if I look at this pasture, I'm starting to see something. I'm starting to see the same thing I saw at Herman's with the figs last week. It's really important to build an environment. And that environment may be a little bit messier than we want. And what I mean by that is instead of having a pasture with no trees in it, well, I may need to have some trees in it. And these trees have allowed for the grasses here to be absolutely beautiful and lush and tall and great for the animals. So I want to come in and kind of create this, what I have right here, which is enough of a canopy for one tree to kind of during the day interrupt the sun and give the ground a little bit of a break. And then you got another tree over here and another tree over there. So I'm looking for that same kind of density, maybe one tree every 40 feet. That's what I'm seeing here. One tree every 40 feet seems to be working here. Now, obviously, it's going to take years for these trees to be the proper size. And hopefully by mimicking that, we can create a little bit more self-sufficiency for ourselves when it comes to our animals' feed. Because one of the expensive things about having animals is their feed. Generally, what we put into our horses, for example, who are not self-sufficient at all, is totally different than what we put into our goats, or what I put in my meat goats, which is nothing. I mean, maybe $100 worth of feed a year go into my meat goats. Into our cattle, between the leased land here and what I buy in hay or haylage every year, maybe $1,000. For a herd of 11, that's not bad to have a feed bill of $1,000 a year. So I say all that to say this. I think it's so important to build and retain the nutrients that we have and the resources that we have coming on our property, because once they leave our property, they're no longer ours. It's not like you can go and like get your topsoil back from your neighbor. He's not giving it back. Find what works for you. That's what I'm doing, is I'm looking at my land, I'm finding what works for me. And when I find a method and I see a pattern that's working, I see beautiful grasses in the middle of a very dry summer, I go, okay, let's mimic that. Let's do what's already happening there because, well, it's working. And nature is telling me that's what it wants to do. So that's what I want to do, because as we've seen so many times, when nature decides something, It's pretty much decided for us. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us on A Simple Life. Have a good one. Hope you enjoyed yourself.